Tonight we are pleased and privileged to be able to have the official launch of a book called Crack Cocaine, Treatment, and Me by this gentleman right here, Grantley Haynes. Please put your hands together and give a warm upstairs at the Ritzy welcome for Grantley Haynes.
That's a nice welcome, isn't it?
Indeed it is.
You do well in those areas. I like that. I really do.
Thank you. Now, quick show of hands. How many of you, a few months back, we were lucky to have Grantley with us launching his book about the British reggae music industry. How many of you here tonight were there on that night? Okay,
right,
so
a good few.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Not quite half and half. So in that case, what I'd like to do to begin this session about your new book, I'd like to recap a little bit for those who might not be familiar with who is Grantley Haynes.
Oh dear, that's a big introduction. Grantley Haynes is somebody who was born in Birmingham, England, and that's the area of Borsall Heath, where the Birmingham Central Mosque is, if anybody knows there, right? That's where I was born, and I grew up, in one room, like with all my sisters. I've got 3 sisters, and I grew up in one room in Birmingham, and we learned to get along with each other. I learned a lot from my sisters. I learned a lot from my mum, so I know how to work with women. I'm in touch with my feminine side, as they say, right? I did play a few tricks though, put cling film on the toilets for Christmas and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Used to hear some nice screams from the bathroom. So that was kind of neat, and I didn't own up to it being me. That was another thing. So I moved into music, kind of playing it from my dad. So my father, he used to have one of those blue spot grams, yeah? And the blue spot gram is something that was a fixture in a lot of reggae or African Caribbean households. You always had a blue spot gram, and you always had a television. Black and white was mine, yeah? Mine was a black and white TV, and we had to put money in the back to keep it going, or else we couldn't watch programs. So what I actually then did is I actually worked at getting my dad's music and playing it when he wasn't at home. So if you see any lashes across my arms and stuff, that came from my dad not liking the fact that I was playing his records, until I became a DJ and I was making money, and he was all right with that then. But when I was a DJ, I was lucky enough to meet people like Ali Campbell, Pato Banton. This is feeding back a little bit.
Yeah, I think we need to try and take the echo off Grantley's mic a little bit if you could. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So what happened is I used to play at gigs, and they used to come up and say, "Grantley, play this, play that." And I'd be playing it. And then one day I was playing at this girl's Christmas party, and she said, "Let Roger hold the mic." So I let Roger, Rankin Roger this was, he held the mic and he was, chatting. And then Dave Wakeling came and he sang a little bit. So I kind of got used to this, and Pato Banton did it when I used to play at the old church hall. We used to be there, and I was playing there, and this is how I met Pato. That time he was just a good friend, Pat. We used to play football and stuff like that, and he used to be around. But he used to help me out when I was playing gigs. He'd chat on the mic, and if you're around here later, you'll see one of my Tipperary, who used to be, who was also one of my ex-artists that I managed for 14 years, I think. So Pato and Tipper, we managed those guys for 14 years, taking them around the world. Pato started with Hello Tosh. I don't know if any of you were around at the Lyceum when he blew the place apart. That's when I started managing Pato. And I started managing Tipper from a song called Good to Have the Feeling You're the Best. We was on a tube going into central London, and then we decided to go over to Bermondsey, and he said, I see what you're doing with Pato, what could you do for me? And I said, well, tell you what, this is the litmus test. What car do you drive now? He said, I can't drive. And I said, what car would you like to drive? And he said, well, a Volkswagen. And I said, okay. In 6 months, you'll be driving a drop-top Golf GTI. And he looked at me and he said, you gotta be kidding me. I said, how much money have you got in the bank? He went, gave me the number, and I says, 6 months. And in 6 months, if you see him tonight, because he said he's coming down here, right? If you see him tonight, ask him. 6 months, he was driving a Golf GTI, and he'd had the hit Hello Darling. So that's a little bit about me in the music industry, and from there we became a team. I started work with a guy called Peter Spence from scratch, and I managed his career for about 10 years. And the difference with Peter is we couldn't get a record deal that would pay him enough money to do what we wanted to do. So by that time, I'd learned how to produce records. I had gotten a studio, I hired a studio, and we produced the Peter Spence album, which reached number 4 in the Black Echoes charts, and it sold on its first 2 weeks. I think it sold about 3,500. So we made our money back.
So essentially, in that first book, the way you describe it, you just kind of fall into this through the sound system scene and your connections on that scene, that people knew you as a selector and as an honest and reputable person.
Yeah.
And essentially at one point, I think it's Pato kind of turned to you and says like, oh man, who's gonna manage me? And you said, yeah, I'll do it. Like you didn't even give it a second thought. And you fell into the role, but you educated yourself about what that responsibility would mean, how you could fulfill it, and then you did it.
Well, the thing was for me is that my dad always made sure I went to school. I would never miss, in fact I loved school. I would never miss a day from school, except one afternoon, and that was because of some young lady that I liked a lot, right? So I missed an afternoon from school, but for the most part, I was at school. And I remember, if you know Birmingham, you know that there's a guy called Hatman, a shop called Hatman, very, very popular in Birmingham. And his wife is Paulette Hamilton, the MP, Paulette Hamilton. And Dennis came to our school and he said to me, I'll never forget you, Grantley, because when I came to, you was one of the smartest kids in school, and you always had a pen in your top pocket. So I loved to learn, I loved education. So when I said to Pato that I'd manage him, I went home, and in the first 2 weeks, I read about 6 books on the music industry. I just read them cover to cover. One of them was the making of a band. one was production, one was the music business. So I learned about contracts, I learned about negotiation, I learned about how to communicate effectively with people, how to, you know, be straight up and do accounts, you know. It doesn't matter whether you do them verbally or whether you do them in writing. Especially when you've got a lot of accounts, you need to do them in writing because people tend to forget. But if it's, you know, the one-off here and one-off there, you can just verbalize it. You can say, right, you gave me this, I've spent this is the money that's left, this is for me, this is for you. End of story. But what an artist really wants, whether they say or not, in my experience, is they want to make money. Let's make no issues about that whatsoever. They want to make money. So I learned that, and I thought to myself, well, if you want to make money, I want to make money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I know what my job is. So when I decided to put a contract together, it meant that I could explain to the artist, this is what you're going to get for what you do, this is what I'm going to get for what I do. So always hold me to account. Don't ever let me off the hook. Hold me to account. Just like the boss of an organization would hold the staff member to account, you know, do, you know, whatever it needs to be. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so now if we move up to, let's say, 1980s, kind of earlier mid-1980s. Yeah, you can turn the phone off.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's all right, you just have to put it on silent. Most people do.
So, I can remember growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, Pato Banton became a major star. He was kind of synonymous with reggae for people in Northern California in that era. And of course, we had no idea that you were the man behind it at the time, or that you played a part in it.
Yeah.
And then also Tippa began to make inroads.
Yeah.
And what you explained in that book and in this book is that because you were spending so much time on the road, especially transatlantic, spending a lot of time in the US, because you understood that Pato's core market really would be the US.
Yeah.
And you explained that it took a toll on your personal life, essentially.
Definitely. I think I broke up with at least 3 girlfriends that I really loved. And my kids almost became estranged from me because, you know, it would just be telephone calls. And the thing about it was, you know, you're on the phone for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. And it's £1 a minute at that time. Yeah?
Yeah, and those were the days of you're feeding the thing with 25-cent coins.
That's right. So you got loads of coins and you're sliding them into the machine, or you're in a hotel room and you're doing that.
And you're getting a shocking bill at the end of it.
At the end of it, so I used to go down after I've made a call. Some of these calls were over $100. So you can imagine. So we kind of did some good business with Pato's tours, you know. We was, at times we were playing to 10,000 plus. So the management role became even more critical. The accounting role became more critical. And the whole organization of managing one artist and then managing another artist, and both of them being worldwide, because, you know, Tippa was going all over the world, you know, Russia, everywhere. Pato was going all over the world, Africa, you know. the whole of the United States. People forget that from New York to Los Angeles is 3.5 days. And if you're doing a tour of the United States of America because you want to break the United States of America, you're talking about one tour was like 3.5 months, 104 dates. So we was out there for 3.5 months. So imagine being away from your family for 3.5 months. You get home and the house has changed. You get home and the kids are talking different. Their hair's grown into an afro and you're thinking, gosh, I've got so much to do in this week before I'm off again. So it was difficult. So I decided to stop, and I gave 6 months notice, and I carried on from there, and I enrolled into Birmingham University to do a degree in Bachelor in Philosophy, and I majored in youth and community, and I remember passing that, and I got a really good job, and I was doing that for 2 years. But what I did while I was doing that job is I also enrolled at Leicester University, the Scarman Centre for Public Order, for my master's degree in criminology. And then after that, I did my MBA, my master's degree in business and administration. So I was always thinking that I really want to do some real work, some real work for the community, because by that time I'd learned a lot. I'd read about Martin Luther King, I'd read about Mandela, I'd read about, people like Mahatma Gandhi, I'd read about people that were strategic, Stuart Hall, policing the crisis. Really good books. I've still got them now. A book called There Ain't No Black in the Union Jack. I remember reading that. And I'm gonna have to put a sign up to you guys.
Yeah. Please
Right.
put your phones on silent, please. Thank you.
Anyway, so I remember reading those books, and those books kind of directed me to where I needed to be. So I applied for this job after being a youth worker and managing youth services in Birmingham. After 3 years, I applied for a job in the NHS called the manager for crack and cocaine treatment. That was in 1997, going on 98.
Okay, so if we think about this book, now one of the things I appreciated about early on in the book, you give some good context about your journey, how and why you left the music industry. You also mentioned that you have a kind of a family background in community service as well, that's kind of been, those are the values you were installed in you.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I appreciated is after we get there, when we get to the crack cocaine treatment program, the first thing you do is you break it down for those of us who might not know the difference. What is crack versus ordinary cocaine?
Yeah.
Or,
Hydrochloride.
Yeah. So that was a good starting point for me. You talk about what are the chemical components of each, how is crack made. You go into a bit of the history of crack, how it has its origins in Colombian drug cartels and then ended up taking over America and having a disproportionately negative effect on the black community in the States. And then you talk about how it began to have a similar effect in Britain.
Yeah.
Now, from there, you go on to talk about various drug treatment programs, various crack cocaine treatment programs that you became involved in and that you spearheaded, especially after visits to witnessing drug treatment programs as they were done in the USA. One that reached out and surprised me, grabbed me on a personal level. You talk about visiting Delancey Street in Los Angeles. Now, I should mention to you right now that before I was born, when my father ended up in the San Francisco Bay Area through difficult circumstances during the Korean War, when the Korean War finished, one of the first jobs he had was working at a branch of Delancey Street in San Francisco, working on their alcohol dependency program.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was really inspiring for me to see that there you are all these years later, and you're having a positive experience with another branch of Delancey Street.
Wow, it was tremendous, because before I started the treatment program in Birmingham and then came to London and worked in London as well, across a number of different services, and then ended up being one of the NEDs, a non-executive director of the National Treatment Agency. I spent 8 years there. That was where drug treatment really then pioneered through London and through the whole of the UK. It really then made a big difference, because treatment services then dealt with everybody, or more individuals could access treatment than ever before. So Delancey Street, that was one of the places we visited, because first of all, I visited New York, where they would treat crack cocaine users walking off the street on a daily basis. So they would be there on a daily basis, and there'd be 100 or so crack users come through, and they would be giving them auricular acupuncture and a number of different other things, which were alternative treatments, and psychosocial, what we call psychosocial interventions. So those are interventions like, has anybody heard of CBT?
Yeah.
In here? Right, cognitive behavioral therapy. So that was one of the psychosocial interventions that you had. There's another one that I used to kind of bridge together. Carl Rogers, the core conditions. Has anybody heard of the core conditions? Empathy, unconditional positive regard. Those elements, being caring with somebody before you start to help them with a problem that they have. So you've got to be personal with them, because if you don't do that, they're not going to want to engage with you. So that's one of the things that we did. Another thing that we did, which we learned from Delancey Street, is that they never gave anybody drugs. So the idea of giving somebody methadone, that wasn't something that they did. Methadone was not seen as a treatment.
Yeah. So I'm going to open things up for question and answer in just a moment, so put your thinking caps on if you have questions for our special guest, Grantley Haynes, author of this book, Crack Cocaine Treatment in Me, that we're launching here tonight. But I just want to say before we do that I found it very inspiring that by the end of this book, we could see photographs of you meeting Gordon Brown when he was Prime Minister, and various other luminaries, because of the great success that you had with these programs that you spearheaded that were then taken up nationwide. So yeah, is there anything else you want to add, Grantley, before we open it up for a question and answer?
Well, the only thing that I'd like to add is that it was really inspiring, because when I felt that I needed to move on, it was a number of things that came together that made me do that, and most definitely was my kids. I wanted to spend time with my two boys, so that was one. But the beauty is I've got friends from that era that have never left me. You know, when I go to Los Angeles, I've got really good friends. New York, really good friends. Miami, you know, Texas, you know, even in Arkansas, you know, I've got even, you know, like you were talking about the Bay Area, I've got really good friends. Sadly, Billy Graham is no longer there, but I did meet Billy, and it was a really good experience. I was supported all the way by the likes of Tipperary, Peter Spence, and people like that. So although I left the music business, I didn't leave them or they didn't leave me. And hold on, he's here. There he is.
Big up Tipperary in the house.
Yeah, so the greatest thing is that what I do now is what I love doing, so I wanted to always write. And the benefit of somebody who's written before, an author, in Terence Wallen, he's written, and he sat down with me and he said, no, that's not right, that grammar's not right, this is not right, that's not right. And we went through it, you know, almost line by line. So I was very lucky to have people. And the greatest thing is that I met Terence 20 or 30 years ago when he used to manage a service in Birmingham that looked at the users of crack or drugs, but they were HIV positive and people with AIDS. So the super thing is that we were like-minded from then, and he gave me a bit of a baptism of fire, because once I was doing a presentation like this, and he sat at the back of the audience, and I think there was about 200 people in the audience. And at the end of the thing, when I thought I could just walk away, he said, so can I ask a few questions? He said, and I said, yeah, by all means. And he hit me with some real hard questions. I mean, I don't think a lot of people in the treatment fraternity at that time could have answered some of those questions. So I was quite pleased to know that I could answer them. His name is Terence Wallen. He's going to be, or he is, rehearsing in London right now for the Cool Ruler musical, Gregory Isaac. So if you want some autographs by him or by Tipper, you know, feel free to grab them. They're lovely people. This is what I am happy about. They're great people, nice to talk to, nice to engage with. So I'll hand it back to you, Dave.
Okay, big up Terence Wallen in the house. Yeah. Okay, so good people.
Or Mr. Cool, he's going to be known by.
Okay. So good people here upstairs at the Ritzy. Who would like to put the first question to our special guest, Grantley Haynes, about his fascinating book, Crack Cocaine, Treatment and Me?
Or about the reggae book.
Oh yeah, he can answer about the reggae book as well.
I'll start.
Yeah,
no.
Go for it.
Because I've joined him before. Now, what I wanted to ask was, in terms of writing a strategy for Birmingham, how different was it writing it nationally and writing it on a local level? Because the strategies for a city will be totally different from writing a strategy for a local area.
Well, when you're writing, such as this book, I wrote the book as called the crack cocaine treatment to me, and I wrote that because I felt that crack has touched every neighborhood in some way. Crack has touched every family in some type of way, and crack has touched the world. Whether you know somebody that has said, oh, just use a bit of coke, believe me, they either think about using crack or they've used crack. Okay? The one thing I'll tell you about cocaine is a lot of people tend to use cocaine but they'll drink alcohol along with it. Not a good idea, because what you're doing is breaking down your liver because of a thing called coca-ethylene, right? Now I won't go into that because time's short, but Google coca-ethylene and ask ChatGPT, what is it? And they'll tell you it's not a good idea. So either use alcohol on its own or use cocaine on its own. We know what it does. Between 15 minutes you get of a high, and that is the fight or flight experience for most people. Crack's a little bit different. It is fight or flight, but there's a hell of a kick involved in crack. So that's the difference really. When you're writing something for the world or for a country, you hit the main issues related to the substance and how it plays out in a community, a family, or nationwide.
Okay, thank you for that question. And thank you for that answer. Okay, yeah, we got a question at the back. Oh yes, come in please.
Which book gave you the most, which was the most trying to write?
The reggae book. And the reason why it was probably the most trying is because there's all these reggae fans that have an opinion and a story and a knowledge of reggae. Yeah? So there's not too much you can say that they probably don't know in some way. And if you get it wrong, you're going to hear about it wrong. I've had about 22 reviews, and all of them have been 5-star except for one. And the one refers to that he didn't agree with my stance on one of the artists that I spoke about. And I won't say who that is because that would be unfair, but he didn't agree. But he agreed with everything else, so can't be bad.
Thank you for that question. Okay, we got a couple questions over here, yeah, before we wrap things up. Yes.
What advice would you give someone who's going through addiction or someone with addiction and maybe they want to use reggae music or any type of music to, I don't know, as therapy or to help them get through it?
I think music, I've got a mother that's currently suffering from dementia. And I got this little radio looking thing, and all she has to do is lift the lid and it starts playing all of the music that she really loves and she loved when she was a youngster. That brings her no end of joy. It's phenomenal. It brings her back to where she was because those are the things that she remembers. Once I play that, she'll dance. I mean, she's 91 years old and she'll dance some of you off the floor, right? And she does not take, other than what therapy they give her for dementia, she takes no medication whatsoever. She eats her own food. Anybody who knows me in here, they know my mother does not, and she'll give you a lecture. So remember this, what's good for you is not necessarily good for somebody else. You've got to know your body. But what I would say, for somebody coming off addiction, using music, it's a great thing. Use music, but use inspirational music that will give you the steps towards not using that substance that's not good for you. If it's good for you, then great. But we all know that crack cocaine, although it gives you a great feeling when you've used it, once you use it for a period of time, it's going to be hell.
Okay.
And that's what brought me into treatment.
Okay, thank you for the
It's
question.
all in the book, by the way.
It is indeed. And we got one last question in the, yes, over here, yes.
I've got a two-part to my question.
Okay.
Go for it.
We'll allow you.
Thank you. So the first part, I want to ask you, what do you see, if any, would be a long-term solution to the crack cocaine problem?
Well, I think that the long-term solution to the crack cocaine problem is made up of these things. We all feel depressed at times or low. You can wake up in the morning and you can feel low, yeah? We all know this, you can feel low. But if you say, oh gosh, I'm not getting out of bed because I feel low, I'm not moving because I feel like this, you're gonna feel worse. However, if you get up, after an hour, you realize, hold on, I felt low this morning. What's happened? Well, what's happened is life. Other triggers have come into your head, things that you've got to do, people that call you up. And what you've got to try and do, I know it's difficult, but what you've got to try and do is be honest with these people. Like I remember Bagger John, he asked me, I had a heart attack in January, and he asked me how was it, and I told him honestly how it felt, what got me, how, what I did about it. And he said, well, what do you do now? And I told him what I did now to change my life. So you've got to decide, I'm going to do something about this. And that something means that I've got to change. Not everything, but some things. And the more things you change that are easy for you, the more you're going to feel better about the change. Yeah? And that's called the cycle of change. Rolnick and Milner. Or Prochaska and De Clemente. Right? That's the theory. So it's about understanding that in order, like if you keep dating somebody who really doesn't look after you, who really doesn't care about you, what's going to happen? In the end, somebody tell me.
Yeah.
What's going to happen, my dear?
You won't care about yourself.
Yeah. You'll do all the thinking for them, and suddenly you'll wake up, hold on, where's my life gone? So what you've got to do is you've got to decide to do something about it. So the solution is for people to want something different from what they're getting, and for people that know them to assist them with getting something different from what they're getting.
Okay, yeah.
I did my second.
Okay, yeah, quickly, briefly.
So, I just want to congratulate you of having 2 books within 1 year. I think it's amazing. I was just want to ask you, do you have plans for a 3rd one, and what is it?
I'm already writing it.
Yeah, what is it,
And
Greg?
my friend Tipperary always tells me, boy, you kill me. Yeah? So the 3rd book is called Our Country, Our City, Our Streets, Our Safety.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess we've got that one to look forward to.
Yeah.
So keep us posted, Grantley. And I do recommend this book, Crack Cocaine Treatment and Me. I learned a lot reading the book. I'm sure you all will too. Now is your opportunity to grab a copy, get a signed author copy, signed by the author himself. This is also a good opportunity for everybody to hit the bar. At the top of the hour, we've got the man Ross Bucky taking the decks. And a little later in the evening, we've got the man Mandingo, our special guest. So,
Who's part of the story?
indeed. So, one more time, big round of applause for Grantley Haynes.
Thank you.
Jamaica, the land of wood and
All right. Thanks, man.
Now becomes motor
Thanks,
vehicle
sweetheart.
and manslaughter.
Thanks, sweetheart.
So why you and daughter don't be